In the El Chapo trial, previous testimony implied phone recordings of El Chapo were only possible because the cartel IT guy made a mistake.
That's what they said.
That's what they
said.
said.
Made a mistake.
Right, the cartel IT guy, I like that.
I know.
But yesterday's FBI witness says it was done with insider help. Here's a little bit of what the jury heard.
Bueno, los de ahora, ¿y los de ahora qué policías son?
All right, so I don't know what that conversation was about because there's no subtitles, but the prosecution played this phone call for the jury, and all of them, I guess, feature El Chapo talking about his quote-unquote operations.
Right.
The IT guy gave the FBI unlimited access to the cartel's phone encryption system.
Well, so luckily we have someone here to explain what they heard. But in the calls, El Chapo warns his chief enforcer, Cholo Ivan, that to be easy on the cops. In another recording, the drug lord is heard asking a Mexican police commander to do him a special favor. The FBI collected over 800 recordings, and over 100 of them feature El Chapo's voice. So here is CBS News legal analyst Rikki Klieman joining us now, because you're right, neither of us could understand that recording, and it sounded a little scratchy too anyways, right? But you're going to tell us how damaging this evidence was.
I think yesterday was the day that the government should go home and say, we convicted El Chapo today. I think yesterday was the biggest day in this trial so far. And for me, who has been very skeptical about these witnesses, yesterday turned the tide for me. What happened here is, we love, of course, the intrigue of the FBI being, now by the way, we're dealing now with the FBI, not the DEA. So you have another federal agency that gets involved, and they decide over time the only way to really get evidence against people in this cartel is we've got to get the phone calls, that the phone calls are the most important thing. What's the problem? System is encrypted. So the FBI has got to find a way to either break that encryption or find a way into it. So how do they find it? They really trap, not entrap, but trap the IT guy by having an FBI agent go undercover and say that he wants his own encryption system, meets with the IT guy in a hotel room, and the rest is history. Wow. This IT guy, by the way, you have to remember, is really courageous, because you would wonder, some of these witnesses, we've heard cooperating witnesses who say they were so anxious they had a nervous breakdown that, you know, everything in their lives was in danger. Here you have an IT guy who is simultaneously working for the cartel, knows how violent it is, and is working for the FBI. So they get the cartel to move the servers out of Canada and move them to the Netherlands, where the U.S. has a great cooperating law enforcement relationship. Wow. And they can get the encrypted calls. Wow. So what did you hear? Well, yesterday, there were approximately a dozen calls that were played for the jury. Out of the 800, 100 to 200 of which feature El Chapo. And what we learn about El Chapo from these calls, once his voice is identified, are three things. He's either running or deeply involved in the Sinaloa drug cartel. He's literally talking to a corrupt cop. And that the other part of it is my favorite. He tries to calm an assassin about not killing a cop.
Take it easy on the cop.
Take it easy on him.
Jeez Louise. So you said this really sort of turned the tide between the Zambada witness and these phone calls. What type of case do you think the prosecution is really building here? Because it seemed like before it was a case with a bunch of bad guys, essentially, who were all involved in the drug trade, testifying against him. But of course, the counter argument was, well, if he's the head of the Sinaloa cartel, then why is the Sinaloa cartel still raging on as usual when he's been in prison for so long?
Well, that argument doesn't go away. And I think that that's an argument for jury nullification, basically saying to the jury, without quite saying it, yeah, this is a very bad guy. This is a guy who was involved in the cartel. We can't deny that. But the cartel goes on, and it's really his partner, his former partner, Almeo, who ran it then and is running it now. So what do you wind up with? well, maybe he doesn't get convicted of the top count. Maybe in the best case scenario for the defense, he's not the head of this RICO enterprise, this racketeering enterprise called the Sinaloa drug cartel. But he still is guilty of a lot of the other counts. Remember, there's 17 counts in this indictment. And any way you look at it, El Chapo is never getting out of prison in the United States of America.
You know, the thing that I think, though, is that going to even stop anything?
No, I mean, it's funny, Rikki, I was thinking about this when we were sort of looking at this evidence from the last couple of days, and I just thought to myself, you know, when the mafia in the United States, when they sort of cut off all the heads of the families, you know, they're still there, but they're nothing like they were at their heyday. No. Because, you know, courageous prosecutors, you know, took down the John Gottis and all those individuals. Here, I don't know if it's going to have the same effect.
I don't think it's possible to have the same effect because you're dealing with international drug trafficking. You're dealing with drug trafficking that may begin in a place like Colombia, goes through Ecuador, winds up in Guatemala, winds up in Mexico. And let's face it, you know, one of the things we don't like to admit, drug trafficking is all about supply and demand. Right. And the demand is in the United States of America.
And it's higher than ever.
It's higher than ever. And the Sinaloa drug cartel is so smart because when marijuana wasn't enough, they went to cocaine. When cocaine wasn't enough, they went to heroin, then to methamphetamine. And now I am told by reliable sources that how smart are they? Well, what's the big drug in America today? Opioids.
Right.
So what do? They find out how much it sells for on the street, and they undercut it.
It's not even, I mean, it's not just Mexico, it's China, it's Russia. I mean, we're just going to be here for...
And by the way, the one thing we haven't discussed in that whole idea of yours is where is the CIA and all of that?
Very interesting.
Rikki, thank you.
Always great, Rikki. Thank you.
Thanks.